After the Light Died, Chapters 1, 2, and 3, The Dawn of Absolutia. Guilty! I sentence you to death in the name of Absolutia. In the name of all mankind, in the name of Terra, are you punished? For all the blood you shed and all the hopes you crushed, you are killed! Con Magnus van Rothsman shouted the sentence from his position on the veranda. He could see all the masses down below. He could be seen by all the masses down below, from the gleeful mob of dirty, smelly, and frequently mutilated revolutionaries, to the mucus and fluid secreting bodies of the condemned former occupiers. Their faces didn't show fear the way humans did, but their bodies made an awful smell when terrified, and that was plenty. A good many humans covered their noses with dirty rags to keep the stench at bay. Which was dirtier, them or the rags, was an impossible debate to settle. One best left to future historians who would watch the broadcast that was being transmitted all over the world. Con Magnus stroked his dark beard while the guillotine came down over the alien's neck. Sort of neck. Alien or not, it seems taking the head still works, he remarked to his vice-con and the former head of military affairs during the rebellion. His words were tinged with a quiet malice that was echoed by the cheers that went up all over the world. The next alien was dragged up in chains, kicking and protesting and screaming, "We had a deal!" That one never stopped shouting in its guttural tongue, not even while the sentence was pronounced. The blade, though, that shut him up. Not that it mattered. The cheers and jeers were plenty to drown him out. "I suppose so, but it is strange, sir, don't you think?" the vice-con, Michael Rothsman, asked. "That they die when they lose their heads? Not really. A body with no brain is a corpse no matter what," Magnus remarked, but his brother and strongest supporter shook his head. "No, sir." "Brother?" Michael's use of their familial tie brought the con to look away from the bloody corpse and cheering mob. Michael did not refer to him that way unless it was important. That they all emphasized the same thing, that we had a deal. It's like they really believed humanity would accept being slaves and not rebel just because they delivered on modernizing our tech in a few ways. "Maybe they did," Magnus answered under his breath. "Who can say how the alien mind works?" "Why? Does it matter?" he asked. "I think so. If we'd understood the Vecran Combine better, perhaps we wouldn't have fallen into their trap in the first place. Know thy enemy and all that." Michael answered, and Magnus paused, stroking his beard and watching as the next confused alien soldier was dragged up and beheaded. Fair enough. As the Khan pronounced sentences on those in front of him, so he had pronounced over the whole of the world at once. In the capital of every province from Gaul to Remy, from the North Vinland capital of Philadelphia to the Rus capital Leningrad, alien blood ran in the streets so thick that many of the streets would retain the stains until the roads were finally broken up and replaced. And nowhere were there sympathetic eyes cast on the dead. Holding all the hollowed-out eyes of a hungry humanity on himself, eyes of wrath looked back, and Magnus addressed his world. "The providence given to mankind by these almighty demons from the stars has this day passed away. In times past we were divided by some rich and some poor, some high and eminent in power and dignity, and others mean and in subjugation. But whatever their place or fortune, it was at least done by the hands of man, in whom one might seek justice or pity alike. But 7 years ago, our contact with aliens changed all that. We were all one people in evil providence, all brought low, all in subjugation. We who sought friends among the stars found only chains. We who took pity on a single fallen ship were shown the sin that our empathy for them truly was. We thought in joining with them that they would show us their graces. Instead, they showed us our weakness. But we will never be weak again. Terra, that shining city on a hill, will reflect our steel, the barrels of our guns, the armor of our ships, and the strength of our will. If we will not be slaves, then we must be masters. There is no other way but that, not if we wish a future without chains. Now I ask you, Terrans of the greater Absolutia, will you follow me?" He then raised his fist to the sky and shook it in defiance of the stars beyond to come and strike him down again, and with it, 10 billion fists came up in turn, and roars of defiance shook the ground and sky alike. In the aftermath of the great speech, when no sentient or sapient minds lived on Terra but those of humans and the alien corpses were being disposed of in experiments or incineration, the Terran government was already hard at work. "How long before we have our construction ships and science vessels out in search of resources and viable worlds?" Magnus asked his council. The question was simple on its face, a basic request for a timeline. But the council was made up of all the formerly independent nations of the world, and a myriad of differences in culture, language, and priority which made gaps sometimes difficult to bridge. So it was no surprise to Magnus that the first answer he received was the obvious one. Our only deep space science vessel is currently harvesting the Starship business venture for resources and technology. If we don't want to abandon that effort in favor of deep space exploration, then we need to build more ships. For that, we need more shipyards. The speaker was Aaron Edison, a fat-faced man with a body that, unlike most of the world, showed he had not missed any meals for some time. Despite the crowded room full of black-suited men and women, he had ample elbow room to himself, and nobody looked at him when he spoke. Then we expand our shipyards. Bring engineers from Egyptus and Mexico to the captured starbase and begin the modifications right away. Terra will need the ability to produce massive armadas soon. Magnus said it as if it were not a proposal, but an order. But maintaining the pretense of common rule was still important enough that it was rephrased as a motion, and 300 arms went up in favor of it at once. The local stations carried news everywhere of every new discovery, and within a year, the first outpost was built. Fists of defiance and cheers of glee went up to celebrate the accomplishment. But after the fifth of them expanding the reach of the Absolutia government to levels unheard of, the outpost announcements became a veritable blip on the collective radar of mankind. Particularly in the face of what people really wanted. Where are they? The question came up 1,000 times as day melted into day. The enslavers of mankind were out there somewhere. The owners of the supermassive starship that altered the tides themselves when it came too close to Terra were somewhere in the darkness beyond the illumination of their world's defiant light. And there was not one who did not want to know just where they were. One distraction emerged at least. Monumental news today. Scientists report that they have found worlds suitable for colonizing, a mere 3 jumps from Terra. All praises to Khan Magnus Rothman and the founders of Absolutia for this magnificent discovery. Those wishing to colonize this world should volunteer at once. Robert Kang watched that announcement 3 times on a loop. His belly rumbled while he consumed his bland ration pack in front of the public display screen that was permanently tuned to the government network. Nor was he alone either in the rumbling of his belly or in his genuine focus on what the newscaster was saying. Do you think they mean what they say? About colonists getting enough food to sustain them for 5 years while their farms get going? Robert turned his eyes toward the one who asked the question. They weren't addressing him. Clearly the young man to speak up was only talking to his girlfriend. But the wild hope in his eyes showed he was less than skeptical about the claims being played to them. If they really could provide that much food to colonists, then they should be increasing ration packs here and now on Terra, he thought, but he didn't say it out loud. Scanning the crowd, he felt sure he could read a few thoughts similar to his own in that vein, but they, like himself, thought better of voicing such doubts. I don't know. The Khan really wants what's best for us, though, so it makes sense that he'd invest in building colonies. That way there'd be more food for everyone. Even if we have to tighten our belts here at home, it's for the greater good. Her answer to her boyfriend was, in a word, diplomatic. She said the right things in detail, but even if she was just couching her doubts in a pleasant way, the core argument made a point. It wouldn't make sense to send out colonists without the ability to feed themselves. Besides, the way things are, it's better to be farther away. Robert thought it over, looked down at the plastic wrap that showed he'd finished his daily ration and heard his stomach growl at him again, and nodded silently to himself. Free land for anyone who clears it, a farm of my own. Just clear off the native animals and there'll be plenty to eat, even if I have to grow it myself. Chapter 2. Are they dangerous? Magnus Rothman asked when he looked at the rotating hologram of the 4-legged creature with the elongated head and the sharp jaws. They ripped apart the first people to approach them, so yes, Michael answered. His hands were folded behind his back. The medals on his chest glinted in the light of the office. And Magnus nodded in response. That sounds dangerous, all right. Have our scientists already harvested a few of them for study? The Khan asked. A few dozen juveniles, and the adult corpses of what we think were family units. Michael's answer sealed the deal in Magnus's mind. Then the colonists are authorized to use any non-chemical means necessary to exterminate the rest. There's no reason to leave any alive. Just get rid of the creatures so we can get our farms established as fast as possible. Arm and train them like soldiers, load the colony ships with guns, and just get rid of them all. Magnus replied and put his pen to paper to sign the extermination order. There's just one thing, Khan. A handful of scientists suspect these creatures actually have intelligence. Michael's words caught Magnus's ear, and the Khan raised an eyebrow. What is their evidence? He pressed the question, and Michael adjusted the hologram from one image to another. The creature went from a four-legged posture to two, and a sharp stick was in hand. They are making simple tools, stone and wood. They've also been observed moving in groups to fight each other in a coordinated fashion. It's been suggested that we should study them further. Michael's tone was couched with caution, but his brother waved the notion aside. That's no better than our primitive apes. The order stands. They're in the way of our farms, so they're in the way of our future. Get rid of them, the Khan ordered, and with that he handed the signed order over to the Vice Khan, who with a half-bow took it and left the room. Robert Nugian clenched the rifle in his hands. A cold sweat was on his brow as he looked down the length of the barrel and toward his target. Pacing behind him on the line, the drill sergeant continued to bark out directives. Never let them get close! A spear is a primitive thing, but even a chimp can kill you with one if it gets close enough. Shoot them down from a distance. Shoot them in the head and they're as good as dead. His heavy boots echoed on the metal floor, and on cue, Robert and the others shouted back. Shoot them in the head and they're as good as dead! Good! These creatures are between you and your future. Push them out of the way and you'll have your farms, your families, your futures assured. All mankind is depending on you and what you do. For the greater good, anything goes. The rough voice was laced with conviction, and it was hard to argue. When the alien silhouette popped into view again, Robert squeezed the trigger and the creature's head exploded in simulated gore. Everybody was working hard at their marksmanship, and with good reason. If the rumors are true, then whoever gets the most confirmed kills gets the first pick of the new land. And as he thought of that, his mind replayed the video surveillance over the ground. Towering waterfalls, fertile fields that grew unfamiliar but thankfully edible plants, and strange animals with allegedly also edible meat. Robert could already see it. My home, a place of my own beneath a red sky, harvesting crops. I'm sure I can get a wife too. It won't be long before they start asking women to show up here specifically so our population will grow. I can finally have a life and enough to eat. And all I have to do is kill a few crawly creatures with some wooden sticks. Fair trade, he reflected, and when another target popped up, he gunned it down at 400 meters. The scores popped up on screen, and he could see that his was the highest in the unit. He took a deep breath of the stale, recycled air of the colony ship when the buzzer went off to end the day's training. Despite the stale nature of the air, in that moment, Robert could only taste the sweetness of a whole new world that lay just beyond the horizon. He wasn't the only one thinking that way. He could see it in their eyes. Their minds were all on the same thing, a future away from the horrorscape of Terra. So it was a surprise when one of the few women colonists on the ship approached him in the mess hall. "Hey, Rob," Susan Holtzman said with a close-lipped smile on her face when she sat down across from him. "Good shooting out there," she added when they ripped open their ration packs at the same moment. "Thanks. You too," he answered. Her smile returned, still close-lipped. Nobody showed their teeth when they smiled, not after how their former masters showed a penchant for taking them. "I had practice back home. I got a full dozen heads of the long necks in one day," she said and winked. Rob whistled. The long-necked aliens had smaller heads than humans, so headshots were rare. "I believe it," he said, and he did. Her score was only 2 or 3 below his, and hers had been higher than his by 4 or 5 the day before. As the babble of other colonists continued around them, she leaned forward and got straight to the point. "Listen, I've got a line on soil samples for the best land on the southern continent. One of us is probably going to get the top spot and the best pick, so here's the deal. I got on this ship because my family were farmers. I know what it takes to make shit grow. You and me, if we both get the top spots, we pick land side by side. Then we get married so all that land is one place. You get me? We have one big farm, and with my expertise, we'll build up fast, have a great life, and what could be better, you know?" Robert blinked back in silent, stupefied surprise. He knew well enough why she was on the ship. The Khan gave primacy to males for the first colonists, but those women who were on board were either experienced killers or experienced farmers, or both. But the rest of her suggestion... "That's definitely a proposal. But I just I thought, romance, love, Robert stammered, but Susan smirked and stabbed her spork into the gel nutrient supply that made up ship rations. Yeah, listen, man, everybody likes that stuff. I do too, but..." She took a sharp bite, chewed, swallowed, and pointed her stained spork toward him, while her short, mouse-brown hair swayed behind her when the air-cycled breeze caught it. This isn't the norm. We've got to be practical. You're a good guy. I've seen enough to know that. We're going to work the land hard. We're going to smell the same, wash off the same dirt, eat the same food. Farmers, we got to work for each other. My ma worked for my PA, worked for my ma. We do that, and don't forget it. We try hard to be sweet as apple pie to each other. We'll probably fall in love anyhow. And even if we don't, we'll make it work like friends or business partners, you know? Sides, you know? If we got the biggest farm on the best land, I'll bet we'll get mighty rich mighty fast, and that'll make it right nice for us no matter what else we got going on. Get me? Robert's almond eyes did not blink as he ran through the possibilities, and while he did, she wore a smug smile and continued digging at her rations. If he rejected her, she'd probably move on to the next best shooter, and that meant all her knowledge would go with her. Even if he got the best land and she got the second best and someone else the third best was better with an expert than the first best with an amateur. Deal, he said while she chewed up and swallowed another bite of the ration pack. His hand thrust out across the table and her pale hand closed around his in a handshake that sealed the deal. His eyes went over her. It didn't hurt that she was pretty in a farm girl kind of way, with a sturdy build and a sweet apple-shaped face with a smattering of freckles. She felt his appraisal, and that smug smirk intensified. I think we're going to be mighty happy together. She winked at him, and her soft brown eyes danced with mischief that made the inexperienced Robert blush slightly when he realized he'd been caught. Yeah, we will be, he said dumbly and watched her laugh when she picked up her empty tray to take it away. See you planetside, husband. Don't get a stick up your bum before our honeymoon. She teased him and rolled her hips in a taunt as she walked away. Chapter 3. When they reached the first colony world in human history, Robert, like the rest of the ship's colonists turned soldiers, was secured in the double-bar brace. It clicked into place like that on a roller coaster car, and the monitor flicked from a black screen to that of the grizzled face of the ship's captain. His beard was gray flecked with a few hairs of black, and his eyes were cold and hard as they stared into every colonist meant for planetfall. As of right now, he said with a rough, aged voice, we are 10 minutes from entering the atmosphere of your new home. Ensure your braces have clicked into place, otherwise you'll be thrown around like ping-pong balls in a room full of mouse traps. We will not be landing right away. First, we will clear out a space near the best territory on the southernmost continent. Once our engines have cleared out the majority of the animals that we can handle without damaging the land itself, after touchdown, the first 500, our top scorers, will be automatically unlatched. You will then report to the main cargo bay, retrieve your arms, and depart the ship. Our top scorer, Robert Nguyen, will be allowed the first step on this alien world. After that historic moment, all of you will follow. You will clear out all the surviving creatures from a 100-kilometer area over the next 5 days, then erect your settlements for the glory of Terra and your future. Do not fail in this task. All remaining colonists will repeat this process as we establish base settlements on various parts of this world. Then our ship will land and be disassembled into its modular state to build the foundations of our capital. After that, lay the foundations for the future of Terrans everywhere. The young will ask with wonder about this first day of the rest of history. You are the heroes they will make movies about one day. Games of survival will be played, and children will marvel that you survived in reality what they could not endure even in a simulation. Take pride in what lies ahead and never forget your duty. For Terra, for Absolutia, for all time. Fight, work, survive. The transmission ended and the view shifted not back to a black screen but the outside of the ship. The atmosphere flared as the ship broke through, and within a minute or so the tiny dots of the creepies stopped where they stood. They were frozen for several seconds before they began to move. The first view Robert saw of them showed that the group was at least 100 to 200 strong. According to the reports they'd been required to read to understand hunting these animals, they moved in mostly small groups, with families usually numbering 30 to 50. A group as large as this was a veritable empire compared to others. And then he felt the ship tilt, heard the roar of the afterburners, and the ship's engines acted as massive flamethrowers, burning the entire clan of creepies to ash. The ship skimmed along the surface, burning all to naught until it circled around to land on the husks of the formerly living animals. Robert's harness unclicked, and with an hour's walk he found himself standing at the front of a formation of 499 other rifle-bearing colonists. The cargo hold began to open, the wall becoming a long sloping ramp, and he looked over his shoulder just once. He saw Susan only because she raised her visor long enough to wink at him, then promptly lowered it again. He took a slow breath that unconsciously synchronized with the hum of the ramp. Then, when it stopped moving, he stepped forward. His feet echoed on the metal floor. To his ears, they were like thunder. Then they were not. He felt the softness of the ground of a new world beneath his feet. This is one step forward for a mankind that will never step backward again. Robert hadn't been sure of his first words, but somehow they felt right, and evidently the rest of his soon-to-be neighbors agreed. They roared with approval behind him and rushed out of the ship, down the ramp, and broke into small groups on the ground below. Susan found him quickly, and with her came a handful of other young men like himself. "All right, as soon as they unload the bikes, let's go stake our future," she said, and clapped him hard on the back when she looked up at him. Robert cocked his rifle. The rest of the little group did the same. It was answer enough for what lay ahead.